All right, Kyle, welcome to the Leaders Who Care series.
Glad to be here with you, Mark. Thanks for having me on.
I see we're home at Ohio State, right behind you. Nice.
I am.
Good
If it
old
makes anybody
Buckeyes.
feel better, I'm also a Browns fan. That's all I always tell people that. I'm like, you got to give me something. We got to win somewhere because I'm a Browns fan and most everything else out of Cleveland. So we don't do well out there.
Well, I guess it's the thought that counts. They say, I
It
don't
is the
know.
thought that counts. Absolutely.
Or there's always next year type of deal.
That's exactly right.
All the stuff that you don't want to hear when you lost the game. Really? There's always next year. Um, well, welcome, and best place to start would be if you could briefly introduce yourself. And I always have to put an asterisk, especially for men on this. I don't want to know what you do yet. I want to
Yeah.
know where you're from originally, where you are now, stuff you feel comfortable talking about family and things,
Yeah.
siblings and so on. Maybe something even you never told anybody that you want to reveal to the world right now. That's always fun when people have the courage to say that. So tell us a little bit about Kyle.
Hey, I'm glad to. So I am 39, about to be 40 here in
Yay.
about a month. 40 doesn't bother me for whatever reason. 35 did. I'm in the best shape of my life. Lost 30 pounds last year, so that's something new the world doesn't know. Figured I had to kick it in gear if I want to keep up with my kids, who
Yeah.
are Reagan is my oldest. She is 8. And my son, here's a fun fact, is Lincoln, and he will be 3 on Sunday, which is also Father's Day.
Nice.
And so that'll be a lot of fun. I'm married to my wife, Aubrey. We will celebrate 12 years here in August.
Sweet.
I'm originally from Southern Ohio. Mark grew up in Lancaster, which is about an hour south of Columbus. Bounced around as I progressed through my career. And then we live in Archbold, Ohio now, which is very northwest corner of Ohio, about 15 minutes from Michigan, 20 minutes from Indiana. That's where my wife lives, or it's where she grew up. And so we just naturally landed here. My family's spread out. Parents are divorced. Mom actually lives in Vegas, which is where my brother is stationed. He's in the Air Force.
Mm.
And my brother in law, who my sister's married to, is also in the Air Force, but they're stationed over in Germany. So
Wow.
family's kind of all over the place. I actually just got back from a week back home where I grew up, helping take care of my grandma. She's the only living grandparent I have left. She's in the latter years of her long life, but we were really close, and
How
so
old
that
is she?
was. She is 86.
That's great.
86. So
Still has lots
she's
of time. I have a 98-year-old aunt in Montreal, so still has
oh
time.
nice. She is, God love her. She is stubborn. So if she can help it, she's going to be around for a lot longer. But she can't live on her own. She lives on the farm that her and Grandpa
Hmm.
built 50 years ago, and so she's very adamant about not going into a nursing home. So my uncle, he lives down there and it's a main caregiver for her. So he was away, and I went down and spent a week with her, which was good. So
Yeah,
um,
cherish those moments.
we spent a lot of time just sitting on the swing. Didn't solve a lot of problems, but just kind of reminisced about some things. And uh, here's a fun fact that I actually moved in with her and Grandpa. My grandpa passed away 13 years ago from Alzheimer's,
Mm.
and so I moved in with them to help take care of him. And so we were always close. I lived there growing up as a kid, but that had a special bond. I don't think that'll ever be broke. So we just shared a lot of memories and a lot of good times, and spent hours just sitting on the porch swing listening to the birds, which was a lot of fun.
Yeah, you don't always have to solve problems. That's actual life right there.
Yep, it is. It
And
is.
it's so important. Yeah, good for you because I remember great memories with my grandparents. Grandparents have a special relationship, right, with
Yep.
kids and stuff. So yeah, I don't know if I tell you this, my 98-year-old aunt, when she turned 96, still has her mind about her and everything. She said, Mark, where do 95 years go anyway? And she knew the answer logically, which is why I said that. But
Sure.
it was like, how does that even happen? She said, you know?
It goes fast.
Yeah,
It
it
really
does.
does.
Were you when you were growing up, were you close to your siblings?
So yeah, I never mentioned my siblings. So my I'm the oldest of three. So my brother he'll be 38 in on the 26th of this month, and my sister is 3 years younger than him. So she just turned 35 in April. So yeah, we were close growing up. Haven't as we've kind of scattered all over the place.
Yeah.
Um,
What
I
did you guys do? Did you make your sister play football with you, or did you play? Do you have a lemonade stand and a partnership entrepreneurial venture, or what?
she's tough. She's the youngest of the three of us. So growing up with two older brothers, she could take care of herself, and everybody knew it. She ended up she's a nurse, and so we didn't go into a didn't do a Wahlburger type of a restaurant thing or anything like that. We're not a franchise owner of any sort, but um, we we still stay in touch as best we can. It's probably the one really good thing about technology that I love is you can stay in touch with people like you've never been able to before, even all the way across the world. And so my sis Tara is my sister's name. Kevin's my brother's name. We're texting constantly. They've all got kids. We've all got kids the same age. My brother's got three. My sister has three. She's actually got all three boys, but the youngest are twins.
Hmm.
And so they're a hoot. Get on FaceTime and let them all scream and run around like crazy, which is a lot of fun.
That's one thing we learned with in COVID, where we realized that you can have serious conversations, but you don't have to take yourself so seriously all the time. If a kid
Oh
walks
yeah,
in or a dog walks in, you talk to them. That's all.
you
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 know,
do, you do.
instead of
Don't
going,
be
oh my God, oh
surprised.
my
My
God.
wife's at work, so if I get a knock on the door and a scream yells at me, one of my kids may make an appearance. So that's a
Yeah,
very real possibility.
that's fine. That's fine. Um, well, how did you decide? And was there any relation in when you were growing up? How did you decide to take what you took in school, college wise? How did you pick where you were going?
Yeah, so
What were
it's
you
really
thinking back
interesting.
then?
So my bachelor's degree is in middle childhood education. So I wanted to be a teacher. Really wanted to coach. As I look back on that, being in leadership and truly caring about people as a focus, there's a lot of overlaps there, right? And
Yeah.
so um, I didn't know what I didn't know. I think in a lot of ways, back then it just seemed like a logical thing to do. I grew up on a farm, and a lot of my career, a lot of my leadership career was in the ag space, and for whatever reason, was like, well, I'm just going to be a teacher and wanted to be around kids, wanted to influence kids, wanted to just make a difference. And then God had different plans. If you want to make God laugh, tell him your plans is kind of the running joke. And so had a different kind of course correction for me. But the interesting thing is, I mean, everything that I learned from an education standpoint, I mean, I use on a daily basis, right? I mean, I think sales leadership is 100% about coaching, teaching, mentoring people, right? And that's really all teaching is. So I tell people all the time, I'm like, I'm not a teacher, but I still use what I learned there every single day, and then kind of help them make that connection, which is a lot of fun.
Yeah, of course. I also noticed though, were you somewhat special when you took your bachelor's degree? Was it math and science
It was.
specialization? Yeah.
It was. So I'm a numbers guy. And so there's a lot we'll probably talk about when we get into what I do and what I'm passionate about.
Well,
But
it's not a feature film, but we'll talk about
there,
something.
yeah, yeah, yeah. There's an aspect of accounting that I really enjoy. So numbers, math to me, there's certain things that are black and white. I like numbers. I like math because you can't argue with it. It always clicked with me really well. It was always really fascinating, even from the science standpoint. When you get into doing those scientific equations, I'm kind of a nerd, and so it works out really well. My wife is also a teacher, but she focused on social studies and English,
Oh,
so I
that's
did
better.
math and science. So we'll make a well-rounded team as our kids get older.
Yeah, and then you got more to talk about versus the same subject all the time. Now you say you
That's
can't
exactly
always
right.
argue numbers. Do you remember that expression, fuzzy math in
Yeah,
politics?
yeah, yeah. There's There's a lot of fuzzy math. I don't know that I could add and subtract the way they're teaching Reagan 2 now. I just memorized it, right? They just had us memorize all this stuff.
Yeah,
And so the way that she's doing math and equations now and they're pulling stuff, I'm like 17 minus 9 is always 8, right?
right.
There's no other way you need to factor. Just know that it's 8, right? But it's fun. She teaches me a lot, that's for sure.
Well, I think every era goes through that because when I was a kid, my parents were saying, "Well, we never learned that way." And when my
Yeah.
kids, I said, "I didn't learn that way." And but at the end of the day, I actually think we need to up our game in what the kids are learning and everything.
Yeah, well, and that's I've made it a point to not fight it so much. One of the things, and I'm sure you see this too, is change is never easy for anybody, right? And so whether it's learning math or you get into the business world, right? Yeah, this isn't how things were done 20, 30, 40 years ago, right? But it's that constant evolution of being comfortable with change and then adapting to what that is. And so I've kind of changed my tune over the last 8 years as we've started having kids, and I'm like, yeah, I need to practice what I preach a little bit because just because I didn't do it that way doesn't mean that that's not the right way to do it now. So,
Yeah, the faster you get that attitude, the less hassles you're gonna
amen
have.
to that. That's true. Yes,
Because
sir.
every era has their own rebellion type of thing of what they want, even if it's just because they got to make it their own. That's what you should be doing. And
Yeah,
uh, and if you're smart, you try not to make the least. You try to make the least mistakes by getting somebody older to help you not make the same mistakes and stuff.
absolutely.
But they say what's that expression? Youth is wasted on the young.
That's
Um,
true.
and so things like that. Now, how did then so you wanted to teach and whatnot, and you took all that. How did you end up in sales type of arena?
Yeah. So when I was going through college, my parents actually got divorced, and so I was going to school full time and working full time at the local co-op.
Hmm.
And so just started working in the feed store. I love telling this story. Started it wasn't all that long ago, but was making 750 an hour, right? Just working my way through college. Got to be a bobtail driver, which was delivering propane. I could do that in between classes and on the weekends, and basically do whatever I needed to do. And I had a really we'll get into this at some point, I'm sure, when we talk about why I'm doing what I'm doing now. But had a great mentor, still a really close friend that was the manager of that location, and he asked me about 8 months before I graduated. He says, "Hey, what do you want to do when you graduate?" So I'm going to school to be a teacher. I'm going to teach. He's like, "Okay." And then every 2 months he would bring it back up again. And the last time he asked me 2 months before I was going to graduate, I said, "Well, do you think there would be something available for me here?" And he goes, "Actually, I think there might be." He knew it, 6 months prior to that. And they needed a commercial energy salesman, and that's what his career was in. And he kind of mentored me through the sales process. A lot of what I believe now, a lot of what I take into leadership now, all started with those sales lessons back then, 20 plus years ago. And started with that, and then just kind of gradually worked my way up into different roles. Ended up switching into the ag space, got into distribution, and then ultimately transitioned to where I'm at today.
Well, the aspects makes sense because you grew up on a farm.
Yep, I
I
did.
mean, this doesn't sound actually that unusual. It's that,
Now,
you know.
I looking back, and again, not knowing what I don't know, I knew I wasn't going to be able to farm. Grandpa didn't own enough acres, and my uncle was there, and so there were some complexities there. But I didn't really know what else ag had to offer. And so, like I said, I'm like, well, teaching just seems like a natural course. A lot of my friends were going to be teachers. I'm like, I want to coach, I want to influence the younger generation, want to work with kids. Seems like a natural fit. And so, yeah, it wasn't as much of a stretch when you look back as what I thought, and it was the right move. Ag's been good to me for sure.
Well, I mean, healthcare is probably the number one sector, if you will, but to say the least, food and ag and soil and everything is sustainability is huge right now because we're thinking more about, how farmers can be more effective, not to mention how can we eat healthier and all
Yep.
that stuff. So it's a big time, it's a big time sector.
Oh yeah, it's there are so many opportunities out there in ag, still are, and even more. You get into the AI space, and not just in ag, but in general.
Mhm.
There's so much technology in ag that a lot of people that don't know much about it would blow their minds. Right when you get into it, it's crazy.
And there's some good documentaries. The first one I saw was it Kiss the Ground or something like that. That
That one's good.
taught a lot, and that was one of the first ones that said, "Hey, pay attention. This look what's going on. It's
Yep.
brilliant stuff that's happening." And it's also a way a lot of people are trying to get younger people to start looking at farming again, but
Yep.
not like the great grandparents did and whatnot with the horse pulling a tractor or God knows what. But it's got some sizzle to it now.
Yep. Yeah, it does. It's really interesting because there's a lot of. Whoop, is my screen froze, Mark?
Yeah, but keep going. It'll come back.
Okay. It's really interesting because I didn't know I grew up on a farm, but I didn't know back to when I got into ag, didn't know what I didn't know.
Hmm.
And there's a ton of science into it. I mean, you see cornfields or wheat fields or soybean fields, cotton fields as you're traveling across the country. And the amount of technology and resources that go into that are pretty unbelievable.
Yeah, it is quite amazing. I'm gonna pause for a second. Yeah, I find it fascinating because there is so much advancement in farming right now, and so much that we're learning, which is actually really good stuff to be healthier and maybe how farming can even be better. We romanticize farming a lot and cowboys a lot, but they worked hard in those
Oh yeah.
things. So it wasn't all romance like gee ha or whatever. So the thread worked where you from a farm into ag. Did you ever teach, even substitute?
Nope, I never did. Thought about it, especially as I transitioned into starting my own business. I
Hmm.
always had that to kind of fall back on. But once I did my student teaching and I graduated, I never taught. Thought about I do a lot with schools and in our church with the youth, and so there's always that aspect of it. But nope, I never substituted a day in my life.
Well, it'll come back. I know, you know, for for example, my two young boys are actors, and one's really continuing on and pretty strong and stuff. And I said, even if you don't become actors, they learn so much on how to be in front of people and this and that and the other.
Yep,
And same thing with the teachers, like you said before. Sales and this and that teacher experience is super valuable. In fact, maybe even
absolutely.
more valuable than some sales training in that you're not a salesperson. You're actually
Yep.
doing it a different way, which kind of leads me to how did you decide to venture out? Because it's not always easy. You kind of have the security, quote unquote, working for somebody, but then venturing out and being an entrepreneur, it's exciting and scary at the same time. How did that get triggered?
Yeah, so I knew this was always something that I eventually wanted to do. Going back a little bit to that mentor that I told you about when I was working full time and going to school full time. When my parents got divorced, my dad just up and left, and my mom was a stay at home mom. And so, as the oldest, and I was working, it just kind of naturally happened that I helped take care of my younger brother and younger sister, and finances included. We got into a really tough spot. Um, 2 years after they divorced, it was wintertime, one of the coldest winters we ever had, and I was a bobtail driver. And we couldn't pay the electric bill. The propane tank was empty, had no money. And so I filled up our propane tank. No intentions of paying for it, just out of desperation, didn't know what else to do. And, you talk about leaders who care, and I love what you stand for, Mark, because Thad was his name, is his name, was the epitome of that, and could have fired me, should have fired me. But he pulled me in his office and he said, "Hey, I know what you did. what's going on? And he just talked to me. He didn't berate me, didn't yell at me, didn't fire me, even though very much would have been justified, and I would have been mad at him. And he said, "I'm not going to have you pay for it, but I at least want you to work it off, right? We'll do it over the course of 6 months, a year, whatever that looks like." I said, "Okay." And from that moment on, I got a glimpse of what really good leadership was, what true leadership, actually was. And I wouldn't be where I am today if it wasn't for him. Jesus Christ and Thad, I joke, are the two people that changed my life more than anybody else, and it's true. And so he influenced me in a really positive way, and I didn't know exactly what that would look like. Even after I started my consulting business, it's shifted a lot, but the premise is always the same. And it takes that moment that I went through, one of the hardest moments of my life, and try to pass that on to other people. Now, it's not to say that we don't all have situations where I've had to let people go.
Sure.
But I still think you do that um, with humility and kindness and grace. Doesn't mean that everybody's a fit, but it also doesn't mean that you want to jump to conclusions either. And if you can and have an opportunity to show people grace and kindness, and can mentor them in those situations, then we're not just changing the P&L, right? We're impacting people's lives, because I wouldn't be the man
100%.
I am today if it wasn't for that.
Yeah, 100%. I talk a lot about what's the best ROI on people. So it applies to a parent and a kid. It applies to a boss and an employee. It applies to the coach
Yeah,
and the player. They do something wrong, whatever it may be. Um, the best coaches, parents, bosses have realized that if they bring that person over, like your guy did, and say, well, what's going on, or this is what you did wrong over there. And even for a young kid, you're not going to say it the same way as if the person's an adult, but they get it better if you talk to them straight and not like a baby, because
yep,
you really care if you do tell the person straight, even if they're 5 years old, they interpret it away, and you tell them they're doing great, and then you put them out back on the ice, back on the field, or same in terms of the kid, you keep them in the house, whatever.
that's exactly right.
But the ROI from that person like you, for being loyal, for being fulfilled, for getting it, and cherishing that moment, if you will, is spectacular. And for
Yep,
even a pro athlete, the numbers on the contract have nothing to do with any of that part.
yeah,
That coach really believed in me and made it happen. And it's a great story that you tell in there. And because think about it, if he would have just fired you, where would anything good come of that type of thing?
right.
You know,
Absolutely.
you missed the whole opportunity of helping a person grow, and it's good for business and good for the
Yep.
family and everything. So, kudos to him. Tell me a little bit
He
about. Oh, go ahead, real quick. Yeah.
he it was one of those things where, and this is what I coach my clients on. It wasn't just a single moment where he had that empathy, right? He knew enough about what I was going through to know that there was something deeper, which is, a big piece to that too. Getting to know your people, and more than just being a paycheck, is a big deal.
Hey, the regular season is for developing your skills so they're so instinctive when the playoffs come,
That's
type
right.
of deal, and you know your players. So when the playoffs come, and the players know each other, because at the end of the day, they're accountable to each other more than anybody. And you develop, and you get to the playoffs, and it's like, we're in, let's go,
That's exactly
type
right.
of thing. So how have you translated that into your own business? And was it scary?
Oh yeah. Everybody that I'm sure has been on your podcast or ever listens to this, it's doing their own thing, will tell you probably the same thing. It's been the best and the hardest, scariest thing that I've ever done.
Hmm.
Um, but I think there's something powerful that comes from a lot of experience, and honestly a lot of conviction. And it all came from not being able to fight it anymore. I There's some sort of drive and something inside that makes you a little bit crazy. I think you got to be an entrepreneur to some degree,
Yeah, you do.
start your own business. And so, but when I think back, that particular moment was so impactful for me. I wanted to provide that to others, and I got glimpses of it when I worked in corporate for other organizations, and I took those lessons and always applied them to me. And there's still today, there's people that I talk to on a monthly basis that I worked with 10 years ago from that still have powerful relationships. How in a different context that I was still able to make a difference in their lives in some way. And when you make those connections, I wouldn't say that we're best friends, but we talk and I care about them and they care about me, and there's something to that. And so
There's
I think
more than
that's what's
something to it. There's a lot to it.
there's a lot to it. That's right. And I think that's what's missing. I don't think there's very many leaders, business owners, you know, whatever your title is, that wake up and intentionally set out to not care about their people. But the analogy that you said earlier is 100% true, and sports is probably the best example of that. Is leadership is a skill, and you can't forget that, right? Empathy is something you can practice. Kindness is something you can practice. Patience, listening, all of these things, right? Just because it doesn't come natural to you isn't an excuse that if you're in a position of leadership that you can influence other people, that you don't take that seriously and you don't work on it. Because then when it comes time for the playoffs and it's time to score the goal, or whatever that looks like, you want to make sure it's just natural instinct to have those conversations, and just so it comes off of you, just eludes from you very naturally. And so that's what I want to pass on to people. I'm very open with that story. A lot of people have heard it. I'm a pretty open book because I think that's where it starts. If you're vulnerable with people and honest about your own flaws, your own, failures, people
Yeah.
can relate to that, right? And so I think we have a special responsibility in leadership to do that, to model that, for our people, for our employees.
Well, they do say that it takes more muscles to frown than to smile. So why the hell are we frowning so much? I
Yeah,
mean,
that's true.
and I think what you're talking about is you're working a muscle. You're working a kindness, a forgiveness, a friendly, whatever the muscle is, muscle.
That's right.
And once you got it, it actually somebody put it. Somebody put it that said kindness drips from the top or something like that. They told me.
Yep.
And
Yep.
and it's true, and that's where role models come in also. And so it's great to hear. Tell me a tiny bit about what the core of your consulting differentiation is.
Yeah, that's a great question. So it's really interesting. So my business is called People First, not rocket science. You can figure out right away that I'm focused on people, and prioritizing your people to generate better performance, to increase profits. And but the unique thing is, you would think, especially in the age of that we're in today with AI, that I would be anti-AI, right? Because you hear a lot about
Yeah.
these robots coming in and taking people's jobs and all of this stuff, and it's actually just the opposite. I think, just like with any technology, as leaders, we have the responsibility. We can either use technology for good, or we can use it to, do horrible things. And
Hmm.
so I think what AI has completely unlocked for us is the ability to actually make better and stronger human connections. And so that's what I am actively working on. I'm not a tech guru, but I'm working on developing an app. I've partnered with a few other people that have come up with some unique assessments in order to do this, but we utilize AI in the background, because what AI is really good at is it can analyze a ton of data. It can do it very quickly. And if we take those capabilities and actually use it to better understand people, because what I would say, Mark, what does come more natural to others sometimes is being able to connect and relate. Emotional intelligence is something that's a little bit easier for other people, right? Just to pick up on some of those non-verbal cues, body language,
Sure.
tone, things like that. You can still practice it, but we don't want to treat people. It's a combination of the golden rule and the platinum rule. Yes, you want to treat people the way you want to be treated in some aspects, but then you also want to treat people the way they want to be treated. And so, even the best leaders out there, and I've struggled with this and I've done this wrong many times, is I treat somebody the way I want to be treated. Now, there's always genuineness and kindness involved in there, and my intent's always right. So they always give me the benefit of the doubt, even though I get it wrong. But the reality is, everybody's different. Everybody's unique, and so you gotta somehow take that uniqueness and make sure you apply it to the individual. And that's what AI, I think, can really help. I don't think AI is going to replace more jobs. I think it's going to displace a lot of them. And it's going to be like the internet trend back in the late 90s and early 2000s. It's going to be the new thing that everybody kind of gets used to. It's going to take some people more time, a little bit longer to come on board. But I think we have a great opportunity, phenomenal opportunity. And I've seen it already, utilizing AI from a consulting standpoint, tying it in with leadership, and actually creating better, stronger human connections, which is that's what makes what I do so unique. Is it pulls the non-human element of it, but makes it focus on the human element of it, and then tries to incorporate that in businesses, across the US. I've got a bunch of stuff I'm working on, which is really cool.
No, well said. I'm a big fan of America's Got Talent, I'll admit publicly. And
Yeah.
I record it because I don't want to watch all the commercials when I watch it. But
Yeah.
there was a guy, an Asian guy who was dancing with, I think, 8 robots.
I saw that. That was incredible.
It was amazing.
That the judge's reaction to that, because and I had the same reaction. I'm like, where's this going to go and how's this going to work? One, he was a very skilled dancer himself, but two, when you pair that together, right, it was really, really, really unique. That's a great
And
example.
they were
That video blew my
synchronized.
mind.
They were all
Yes,
synchronized, and they almost looked like they had some of their own personalities too, and they were doing
100%.
certain things.
They
Um,
did.
it was fun, And now when I see videos, people tell me, well, it's probably AI or this. I just say, look, I don't if it's AI or not AI. If it made me laugh and I liked it and made me feel
Yeah,
good, fine, it's AI. Who cares?
absolutely.
As long as it's not
Absolutely.
political BS that they use AI for, then that's another story. But um, personally, I think I'm going to go into coaching dogs because I think they're a lot easier to coach.
Yeah.
And
Did
there's
you
always
see? Now, this is something I don't agree with. This is where it starts to cross a line for me, right? Dog's man's best friend. The guy that invented the Roomba, I think the automatic sweeper,
right,
he invented a AI dog, and I'm
right.
like, now, like, you're not going to marry a robot. I'm not going to go out and buy a dog robot, right? Maybe somebody out there does, but there's something about that human connection, which that's what's critical. You can't replace the humanness
Yeah,
that comes from leadership, but I think we can utilize the technology that we have to actually make that stronger, make that better, and make it more intentional,
yeah.
than we ever have.
On that note, I'll have one more question, but I'll tell you, there's a lady that has an AI company called Loving Is AI,
Yeah, yeah,
and it actually teaches through Nova, who's the avatar winner. It actually teaches how to use AI in a positive way, in a good way, not in a fluffy type of, but in a moving in a proper direction way, not to find
yeah,
out figure out how to do something bad type of deal. So a
absolutely.
shout out to Jen and Loving is over there. Um, one more question.
Yes, sir.
Because like I said before, or I always say like we do in LA, we always want to leave them wanting more, so we can do a sequel. That's the way to
Love
go
it.
in LA. But with everything that's happened over years and COVID, who expects the world to shut down and some people feel like it was yesterday and years ago all at the same time.
Yeah,
Um, what are you most grateful for, and what are you most hopeful for?
that's a great question. I think one of the blessings that I don't know that I've heard very many people talk about, but I've been really intentional to reflect on it, specifically starting my own business and stepping into entrepreneurship and doing this was, yes, I have goals. Yes, I want to do well. Yes, I want to provide for my family. I want to generate wealth so I can, give it. But there's a level of contentment, especially in the early years, that comes from starting a business. And so the things I'm most grateful for, my family, my faith, and my health. And those three things are prioritized every day. And that's probably the thing I appreciate most about operate my own business. There's long days, there's travel, there's 16-hour days and days I don't see the family, but those three things always take top priority. And that'd be my encouragement to anybody else out there. And honestly, from a leadership standpoint, there's a lot of people that have some of those same values, and not everybody's wired to be an entrepreneur. And I don't
Sure.
think that makes anybody else any better or worse,
Hmm.
than me or you or the other hundreds of people that you interact with, across the globe. But I think that's why it's important to know your people, to ask that same question, like, hey, what's most important to you? What I'm most excited about, what I'm most looking forward to, is changing the world. I've got some spark inside of me, Mark, and I can't explain it. But I believe that, you know, global engagement scores below 20%, I think is terrible. And I'm going to change that. And I'm going to do it with people like you. Met a ton of wonderful people and continue to meet wonderful people that have that same vision. I think we're going to do it together. And it's going to take a lot of us. But I want to see that before I retire, before I die. I want to see that number at least get to 50%.
Oh, we could get beyond that if we want. So, like, maybe we need more pen pals. Do you remember what a pen pal is?
I do. Actually, my daughter still does pen pals. They still do that in elementary school. So they have a younger and an older, middle-aged kid, and they pen pal back and forth throughout the year, which is a lot of fun.
I love it. It's that's
Yeah,
that's real connection. Well, I'm grateful I have a new friend. I'll start with that.
same,
That's actually
same.
you.
Yes, sir.
And I'm probably grateful and hopeful that there are people like you who really are leaders who care. Everybody talks about this negative, that negative, that negative. There's a lot of people that care and just need an
Yeah.
opportunity to do it and learn to do it more and whatnot. So, but I'm grateful and hopeful that we have that and that there's way more that are going to make that happen. So thanks for being you and a leader who cares, and thanks for being on the series.
Thanks for having me, Mark. Appreciate it, my friend.